Once upon a time, there were two students. Let's call them Student A and Student B. At their young age in elementary school, Student A and Student B had the same score in math and showed equal enthusiasm for math. As the time went by, when they both entered high school, they still tested similarly in math. However, Student B was more likely to answer questions in class than Student A. Student A started to lose interest and Student A's enthusiasm faded. And starting at that point, Student A's math test scores began to fall behind. In the end, when they started to enter college, Student A majored in education and Student B majored in chemical engineering. Similar abilities, but dissimilar pathways. If you had guessed that Student A is female and Student B is male, you'd be correct. Data has shown that female students are much less likely to graduate from college with a STEM degree than their male counterparts. So does this mean that boys are better than girls at math? This is an important question, because the answer to it can indicate what could be wrong with the education system and how we teach mathematics. But before we go into the root of this issue, let's first take a look at what the statistics say. According to the average SAT math test scores from 1967 to 2016 provided by the College Board, boys performed on average better than girls. The study reports that the average score for boys was 527 points compared to an average score of 496 points for girls. Furthermore, according to a study conducted by Niederle and Vesterland from Stanford, published in 2010 in the Journal of Economic Perspectives, there is conclusive evidence that boys outperform girls on most mathematical examinations. However, that same study looks into a unique perspective on this gender gap issue. Maybe test scores aren't the best way of measuring mathematical ability. The study concludes that there is substantial evidence that the competitiveness of certain exams can reduce female performance even when females may have similar or better mathematical ability. The study claims that there are many reasons other than gender differences that affect score. They claim that test scores reflect much more than cognitive skills. They show one's level of motivation, drive, obedience, and performance under pressure. The study reaches its conclusion by first evaluating how men and women compete differently, then it takes a look at how that can affect test scores. The Stanford study first refers to a publication by Technion in Israel in 2003 in the Quarterly Journal of Economics, where researchers evaluated male and female response to competitive environments by asking men and women to participate in 4 different incentive schemes, where each person gets paid money for completing mazes. 30 men and 30 women participate under each scheme. To represent a non-competitive environment they call piece rate, they paid an individual 50 cents for every maze he or she solves. In a random pay scheme, a random winner is selected and wins $3 per maze, and the rest gets none. They represented single-sex competition by having men and women compete against their own sex in groups of 6, where the best performer wins $3 and the rest get none. The mixed competition has equal parts men and women, where the best performer also gets $3 for the best prize, and the rest get none. The gender gap was 4.2 in a mixed tournament environment, which is substantially greater compared to the 1.5 gap in a non-competitive environment. The average performance under piece rate is relatively similar to random pay, and the gender gap in single-sex tournaments was 1.7, which is relatively similar to the piece rate and random pay gaps. What this shows is that it's not the case that women in this study are generally unwilling or unable to perform well in competitions, but rather that they do not compete well in competitions against men. So how does competitive difference impact test scores? The Stanford study references another study conducted in 2008 by Ors, Palomino, and Peyrosh, published in the CEPR working paper. They examined the performance of women and men in an entry exam to a very selective French business school, which only accepted 13% of its applicants. They found that men performed better on average for this exam. However, women dominated the performance of men on the high school exam and their first-year performance at the business school. Although those environments may be stressful, they're much less competitive than the entry exam. This shows clear evidence of how competition can impact test scores and could be a telling sign as to why Student A might underperform Student B despite similar mathematical ability. Maybe we should introduce more competitive environments to girls and boys, so that girls feel less doubtful of their mathematical ability in a competitive scenario. The study doesn't provide an answer to this, and nor does there seem to be a real conclusion to this problem. It's important we look into the truth behind these issues so we can change how we do things to resolve these problems, so that we have fewer Student A's and Student B's, but more students that feel confident in their abilities and translate their confidence into real-life career choices.